Public Works guys and Marissa's crew and Dave's crew and Kim and all them for putting it together. All the barricades were set, ready to go. It just makes my job easier because that is definitely one of the, it's a little bit more different of a detour through town. So the only hiccup we had was a semi driver who chose not to take our advice and instructions and go a different route. He got stuck for a while, so I told him to turn off his truck and enjoy the fireworks. And when the Lions resident car that was blocking his path that was parked legally moved, he could go on his way. So that's what he did. So he wasn't delayed too long, but he enjoyed the parade. So other than that, call load's been a little bit light. You know, we're getting into the winter months. We are looking into an illegal dumping case over at the recycle center. So I've got my guys on that, and we're trying to investigate and see what we can come up with. So we're working some leads on that. I haven't yet got back with Kim yet on maybe looking at trying to redeploy those cameras. After reviewing some of the footage, I see that there's definitely some better angles that we can have a better way to you know, be accountable for people coming in and following up on stuff like this. So I'll be getting with Kim hopefully next week. Other than that, traffic's been busy through town, and we've been busy enforcing traffic. Other than that, it's been pretty quiet. That's all I have. Question. Where's my name?
Do you have questions? Anyone have questions for the deputy? Sergeant.
Yes, he does.
Oh. There we go.
On the cameras, as either this report or your report on the cameers, the quality of the video, is it the angle that's
No,
bad?
it's purely the angle. The quality is outstanding.
Okay.
It really
I know
is for
in your
video
report I
cameras.
read you couldn't view it. I'm thinking, but okay. Now that's as long as it's the angle, that can be easily adjusted.
No,
the quality
we
is
can
cheap is not always
identify the
better.
face right now.
Good. What's that?
We can identify the face as a local person. Yeah.
Good.
Wow.
Good. But yeah, the angle is always.
That's good.
Yeah, just a little hint from being in the security business most of my life. Sometimes you want to catch someone like that, you don't put a camera close by where you're watching, almost at the entrance to Bone Park, because they have to come out that driveway, and they'll already be looking up where they're going once they leave. So sometimes not always close is the best, further away sometimes.
Exactly.
So thank you very much. That's pretty great.
Very welcome.
Okay, anything else for the sheriff, sergeant? If not, then we'll move on to staff reports. And who will go first? Financial report first?
Yep.
Yes. Let's give it a minute to warm up. There we go. Good evening. So I'm here to present the November financials. So for the month of November, the revenue that we received was $603,510. The majority of that went into the general fund at 31%, followed by the Parks and Rec fund at 27%. For expenditures, there was $441,021 in expenditures for November. The majority of those were coming out of the electric fund at 43%, followed by the general fund at 25%. When we look at revenue and expenditures just for the month, the expenditures exceeded revenues in the electric fund. Everything else looked really good. Debt service was paid out of the electric fund in the amount of $93,000, which made that pretty high. When we look at year-to-date, the water department and the sanitation department both have expenditures exceeding revenues year-to-date. When we take that year-to-date picture and we look at it as operating versus one-time revenue and expenditures, this is the operating side. Operating looks really good. Looks like we're covering everything with our revenue. When we look at the one-time revenues and expenditures, though, we're looking at debt service and capital, and we can see that the expenses are very high compared to the revenue that we have to cover them. When we're looking at revenues compared to budget, we have 92% of the fiscal year has elapsed, and revenues have exceeded the budget in the general fund and the electric fund and the Parks and Rec fund. All the other funds are within plus or minus 5%. As the town administrator discussed in November, there was a large donation of $100,000, which was added to the Parks and Recreation Fund revenue in November. When we look at expenditures compared to budget, the expenses exceeded budget in the electric fund due to the refunding. We do have a resolution on the board agenda tonight, Resolution 2019-148, which will hopefully do a budget adjustment for the refunding. When we look at revenues this year compared to last year, the general fund is very comparable. The difference in the electric fund is due to the refunding. The water fund is due to weather. Increases in the sanitation fund are from rate increases. The stormwater fund was just started in 2018, so that one's not comparable. And the Parks and Rec fund, we're looking at, again, that $100,000 donation that we just received. So when we look at expenditures, 2019 compared to 2018, the water fund is the only one that's about plus or minus 5%. Everything else is not very comparable. So the general fund had increases in allocations. We had a large donation. We had a transfer out to Laura, and we had increased spending in our capital projects in the general fund. The electric fund, again, is the refunding. I feel like a broken record on that one. The sanitation fund is due to the increased cost of operating the plant, and the stormwater fund is due to more projects in 2019 than we had in 2018. Parks and Rec is mostly due to increased cost of managing our parks, and there was some increase in capital expenditures. So when we look at it for the quarters, the general fund revenue exceeds the expenditures in all the quarters. So that looks really good. When we look at the water fund, did I skip the electric fund? Sorry about that. Electric fund. The revenues in the electric fund have exceeded expenditures in all quarters except for the second quarter and the fourth quarter. The second quarter is when we did the refunding, and the fourth quarter is debt service. We look at the water fund. Each quarter has seen an increase in the water revenues. So if we look at it, it's a nice upward slope as we go through the first, second, and third quarter. And then the fourth quarter will slide back down on our revenues. In this fund, the third quarter had debt service payments in the expenses. However, the revenues were high enough to absorb that. Year to date, the revenues are still lagging behind expenses year to date. The sale of the property by the new Public Works building was hopefully going to come in the fourth quarter, and that's actually been postponed into 2020. For the sanitation fund, it has expenditures exceeding revenues in all quarters except for the third quarter. The fourth quarter has debt service payments in addition to continued elevated plant expenditures. The stormwater fund, this is my favorite fund. It's beautiful. We just like that one. We'll just say that one looks good. And then the Parks and Rec fund, everything in this fund, the quarters are all very even as far as revenue and expenses. The fourth quarter, of course, we're seeing that large donation. When we're looking at sales taxes, as we reported back last month, we had an anomaly in our data where we had a vendor submit $54,000 worth of sales tax incorrectly. This made our chart look very weird. We did get the money, though, so it is in there. For this month, it's still very high. It looks very good. And there isn't anything weird in it this time. When we get into next month, you'll see it kind of tank because that $54,000 will be taken back out when they did the amended return. So, sorry. When we're looking at the occupancy and lodging tax, again, this is a nice bell curve. We had a lot more revenue coming in the summer months. We are on the downhill slide on this one. The budget for this account is $23,000. Actual year to date is $13,000. And then we look at our sanitation service charges year to date. The rate increases account for about $134,000 year to date. In total, residential customers are paying 75% of the total revenue, and commercial customers are paying about 25% of the total revenue. The BOD was started in April, and that has generated an additional $62,000 of revenue, averaging about $7,800 per month. Commercial customers are paying 92% of the BOD revenue. And that's all I've got. Do you have any questions?
Sorry. You mentioned this briefly, but the postponement of closing on the Eastern Corridor property, we had budgeted $800,000 roughly in anticipated revenue for 2019 from it closing. Is that right?
Actually, we did not budget that. That would have
Okay.
been an unbudgeted revenue.
Okay. So it doesn't really affect the budget numbers for the
It
end
does
of the
not.
year. Okay. Thank you.
I already tried that.
Well, if it comes in next year, then we'll have an unbudgeted revenue item of that, roughly that amount.
Yes.
Okay.
So
That is
then if
correct.
we make a budget adjustment, each month we won't have to say because of the sale of the land.
Right.
Okay, are there any other questions for our finance director? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is
Admin report.
the admin report.
Thank you. As Sergeant Christ acknowledged, the Parade of Lights and Fireworks was really a great display and great attendance this year. Glad to hear there were no problems with that. This year, we did reach out for sponsorships for the first time since the flood, and we're able to, we had $8,300 in sponsorships or donations from local businesses and residents. So that is awesome. That's enough to cover the expense of the fireworks all by themselves without anything else. So that's nice. The craft bazaar stand. I mean, there were 60 vendors present. We had 26 on a waiting list, and in talking to some of those vendors, they inquired, was there any bigger space in Lyons to use? And unfortunately, I don't think we have any right now, as they won't let us use the high school. But that seems to be a popular event, and for both the vendors and people that are attending. As you notice, we are planning some great senior trips this winter yet. They're going to the Monet exhibit and out for dinner and light viewing. So hopefully they're going to feel the love here in December and January for those guys. Also, as was mentioned, the recycling center, having some issues there with people dropping off items. The most significant recently was this refrigerator and a couple containers of used oil. When I went out to check it out myself, someone was out dumping out their vacuum cleaners and other things. So it is obviously a major problem. I think we're going to have to, unfortunately, make an example of a couple people to be able to really get our arms around that. We could find no one to take the oil. We found one company who said, we'll drive to Lyons and pick it up and take it for you for $275. And then the refrigerator, because it had a compressor, Charm could not take it. And so now we're stuck with trying to figure that out, and really adds up staff time and expense on items such as those.
You could give them back to the person that put it there?
Well, once we'll see what Sergeant Chris decides to do with that one. I know there was a lot of anticipation for Summit Housing to complete their submittal of their application last week. The day before we were expecting it, they did call and said they were making a few more adjustments to the site. They're considering now eliminating 2 of the multifamily buildings and increasing the single-family option. And so that will change their submittal plan. And so we do not have a full submittal to release to the public. We're waiting for that to be revised. And once that's available, we'll restart that timeline that we went through a couple of weeks ago to look at both Planning Commission review, Board of Trustee review, and public review.
Victoria, do you think Summit is aware that we really want to get this taken care of before April?
Yes. Yes, they're aware. We have re-implemented our Tuesday meetings, so we're meeting weekly again. They had asked for a break from that while they did their engineering and utility planning, and we recently started back up on a weekly check-in, so they understand. We also have, it was in your packet, as you know, we received a compliance advisory from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment regarding our dissolved copper limits in our effluent discharge at our wastewater plant. I do want to let the board know that, well, and actually, Attorney Dittman has been talking with our wastewater treatment plant operator regarding that issue and plan.
Yeah, so I had a meeting with the wastewater treatment plant operator, Wayne Ramey, and his second in command last Tuesday, I believe it was. And we discussed the issue that came to us in the complaint from CDPHE. Mr. Ramey has reached out to CDPHE today. We believe that part of the issue is that CDPHE is not communicating between its enforcement divisions and its permitting divisions, because there are some revisions to the permitting going on, which may help us better comply with the copper effluent limits. However, we're also working on taking steps to mitigate some of the copper discharge being done in the public water system. And there's some things that can be done at pretty low cost to help us get under that limitation in the meantime. And just want to let the board know that we are on top of it and working towards solutions.
And this is probably multifaceted, similar to the BOD limits. This isn't necessarily, one business. This is a culmination of probably several factors. And I don't even know if the board is aware that we work with numerous households right now to monitor copper also. Any houses built between a certain time period that it was common to use copper pipes, we monitor those as well. So I know that, this is something we need to take very seriously. And once we have an identification of who, might be contributing, we have a responsibility to take care of it immediately so that the federal EPA doesn't have to come in and do that for us, or the state. But we just got this notice, even though it was dated like November 22nd or something, we just received it. And so we have a plan of action to work toward that, and we'll be contacting some local businesses and continuing working with the homeowners we know have copper pipes to start working with them on a plan to not release it into our system. And this will be one of our priorities these coming weeks.
I'll wait till the end or ask questions now.
Might as well while we're on the topic.
Yeah, the CDPHE letter referenced, I think, 4 days in August and September in which they identified violations. What about since then? I mean, I guess those were self-reported by the town?
So at the outfall for the plant, there is basically a constant emissions monitor, is my understanding, that tracks this stuff.
Okay.
And so we have not received any violations since then. From my knowledge, we can definitely follow up with Ramey on that. But I'm pretty sure the plant reports
Monthly.
whenever there is a violation, so we would know.
Okay. So it's tested at the outfall.
It's
so
the
really the
effluent
collective.
as a whole, collective.
Okay.
Until we have, tonight we're going to talk about these monitoring wells.
Right.
At that point, we'll be able to do individual testing. But right now, it's an overall system issue that they're saying if we can identify an individual contributor, we need to address it, is what they're saying, or we face a fine.
Okay. And the CDPHE's letter referenced, I guess it was the reporting letter from the town of Lyons to CDPHE that talked about a plan of action and that type of thing. Can we get a copy of that?
The
reporting
response to
letter.
sure.
Yeah, the one that's referenced in CDPHE's letter.
Okay.
Thank you.
In addition to that, we are meeting with the City of Longmont and Boulder County Collaborative to work through this change in the FEMA federal share calculation. I brought this up a couple of weeks ago as well. That, 6.5 years later, they're asking us to recalculate our matches differently. So we have had a couple of meetings, and we're preparing a presentation to take down to the state to make sure that we are understanding exactly what they want and to have them sign off that they want us to calculate it this way. So there's no drawback on that later. The sewer line installation on the Eastern Corridor is moving along nicely. They've been able to use more pipe than we originally anticipated from Longmont's abandoned pipes, and we are now under the Highland Ditch, which is we're just happy. That was one of those milestones we just want to get through when we're on someone else's property. So that has gone well, and they continue to work, hoping that if the weather holds up this next week or two, they might be able to finish up most of that work except the connecting the ends by the end of the month. In my report, I included a little story about our Bone Park Bridge. It's found a happy new home down in southern Colorado, which I think is kind of a cool story. And let's see, the Planning Commission and planning staff are, as well as the Ecology Board and Parks and Rec, took another tour of the Apple Valley parcels that are available to Lions from Boulder County, and are putting together their formal recommendation. I think we're hoping to see that in January. Looking at Paul. Let's see what else. Oh, CDOT. We wanted to follow up on CDOT. On Friday last week, Planner Glasgow, myself, and the mayor met with CDOT staff. They sent 8 people from their state offices to meet with us. And we had a really productive meeting. They sent the chief of staff from the director, Shoshana Liu. They sent the director of Region 4. They sent engineering staff, project managers. They sent the government liaison staff from the state. And we had a good meeting, and actually were able to identify a path forward for the section of road on Highway 66 in front of the new Public Works buildings. So there is an application process that we can file for a change to the state highway access category and ask for a reduction from an arterial highway to a more of a rural arterial. And it's only been successful once in the state. The city of Durango was able to get that change. It has never had an application in Region 4. So they said they'll work with us on this. They'll help us review it before it goes forward. I think they have a better understanding, though they acknowledge they've known since 2016 we had full plans to build out the Eastern Corridor. And so we came up with that path forward to apply for that. The one thing we'll need is a transportation engineer to kind of write up our request. So that will be a little money that will need to be, we have not budgeted for. So I believe the mayor probably wants to bring this up under trustees again, and you can give us a little more direction on that one. But it was a very productive meeting. So I think that is the highlights, probably. A couple other things, if you have any more questions or want any follow-up.
Okay, Trustee Farrell first.
I just wanted to ask for clarification on what section of the road the CDOT was. It was from Highlands to 66, not at all from 36, sorry, Highland to 36, and nothing about from 36 into even to McConnell?
Oh, we had plenty of discussion about that. We talked about the difference between the PEL, the Planned Environmental Linkage Study, which is a visionary document, versus that access control plan. being a policy document. And so we would request in the PEL to reduce our arterial designation to something more in line with Main Street as we know it. And so that would be done through this process. And then the access control plan, they continue to encourage us to be part of the IGA so we have a voice, because that plan will only be implemented upon a change in use of the property or federal or state and federal funding coming down to make some serious improvements in that area, which they don't anticipate anytime soon. But if we don't become part of the intergovernmental agreement, then we won't have a voice at all. And they'll follow their black and white state policy about access management. So they did encourage that. The other thing that did come out of the meeting, the Region 4 director said that she was going to go back and recommend that the IGA be separated by the Weld County communities and the Boulder County communities. That they did address the fact that Weld County has very different transportation needs with their oil and gas industry on Highway 66 to the east than we do here. And so she was going to go back and recommend that IGA be divided by Boulder County communities and Weld, so that when there are discussions and the group needs to have input, we have more like transportation needs. So a couple good things came out of it. But we talked about both segments, but for the 66 PEL, we were talking about that section for the arterial redesignation.
Trustee Roberts?
My question was similar, and perhaps we need to be reminded. The PEL, does it not extend west from 36?
Well, it does. It does right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we also had a discussion about where did this come up and why.
Right.
And they had notes from a meeting a couple of them had with Joe Kubala back in 2016.
I see.
That he was saying that was an area along the highway that, was having, turning and safety issues. And so I guess that discussion spurred that. But we made it very clear that that's not our wish now. And we want them to take a step back and figure out a way to plan a study for just the Lions area. Take us out of this document.
Sure, because Joe Cabala's offhanded comments compared to our documented planning, long-term
Yes.
planning policy. But there's really no new optimism on the access control plan.
Other than the fact that we were able to express all of our concerns as you shared them here, that, we didn't want turning movements to basically destroy a community and their local businesses. And they were very upfront saying, that is the furthest of our goals. We do not want to hurt your business. We want to help it. And the first step to doing that is getting a downgrade in your designation to this, what was the category? Rural? Non-rural arterial or something like that. And so they thought that is the first step to making all this domino happen.
Well, thanks to you and Paul and the mayor for the efforts there.
It was a real good meeting, very good meeting.
Trustee Browning?
Some questions in a couple of areas. Some of these are pretty important matters. First one had to do with the Eastern Corridor property, the greens, I guess for shorthand purposes. There's a reference in the report to something about town staff recommended, or Think Generator, I guess that's
His
Mr.
company's
Tambrell's
name.
company now, requested many of the initial entitlement options that town staff recommended be established before sale. What does that mean? What are initial entitlement options? What is that?
Why don't you come forward, Paul? There's a microphone right there.
Oh, this works. Oh.
Oh.
So we had looked at master planning out there and getting towards zoning entitlement prior to sale. And Right now, they're going through and looking at rather than just a as-is sale, which was originally proposed, looking at modifying some of those easements that were on the original plat, going through a subdivision, getting in particular, the railroad parcel to be transferred prior to sale or occurring with sale.
That was my next question. What has to be done to, apparently there's an error in the legal description or something of the railroad right-of-way out there.
Oh, there was
in terms of annexation, do we have to actually?
There was an annexation. It didn't go all the way to the eastern edge where it was intended to go. I talked to Attorney Dittman here, and he and I came to the conclusion that because it was intended to go to the full extent, we can just record an annexation map administratively, have it signed. So we have a draft annexation map that we're reviewing currently. It will still require signatures, but then once we record it, that full extent of the annexation will be recorded.
Yeah, that was my ultimate question. So we're going to have to go through an annexation procedure?
No.
Okay. All right. Another question in the same area, the Public Works building, what is needed for it to get a full certificate of occupancy? I know we've got to complete the utility line. You said it will be mostly completed maybe by the end of the month, but there's still
Until the
connections.
sewer is connected.
Exactly.
Okay.
We can't turn on the water till the sewer is connected.
Right.
So until the sewer and water are available for inside usage, we won't get a CO.
Required
So
setting.
right now, it's there for fire only outside.
Once the sewer line is done, you said
Literally
something
connected.
about end connections still had to be done.
Oh, that's on the large sewer pipe they're putting in the ground now. They'll have to then connect it to the lift station and the final connections. Right now, they're doing all the boring and trenching.
So is there any estimated timetable for being able to occupy the Public Works building?
Well, we have, like much of flood recovery, we have, had high hopes and deadlines, and they get moved every month. So right now, we're saying it would be lovely to move in by February 1st.
That was kind of, I was wondering, would we be in there before the busy summer season?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Boy, if not,
Yeah, I know. Trouble.
I need to say yes, of course, but
Okay.
I've seen other things happen.
And then I had one more question on another item in the report, and that was a reference, it talked about latest communication from the fire district and grandfathering of the Festivarian Inn and other residences downtown. What spurred that? I mean, are those?
So the fire department, the Lyons Regional Fire District, indicated that they had concerns that there was development, there was residential downtown that they had never reviewed. Typically, we send plans that where there's a change in use to the fire department, and they approve them. So with regard to the residential downtown, we're working with them on reviewing those, if there's anything that they need. The Festivarian Inn, they brought to my attention that there was records that showed a lapse in the use. It was a 6-month lapse, and if there's a change in use for 6 months, that use can be problematic to if it's a non-conforming use. So we're trying to review. That was years ago. So we're trying to determine what the impact of that is. But the fire department was concerned because they had never deemed that use as safe. And they were trying to get in and examine the safety on the Festivarian Inn.
Its use now has been consistent for the last, I don't know,
Correct.
6 years.
Yes, and he questioned that to the planner and the building inspector, because he's saying at one time it changed, and that was well before my time here, 10 years more, that there was used for offices or something for a period of time. So he is wanting us to check into that and
Yeah.
see if indeed there was a change of use, because if so, then sprinklers and all of that should have been installed before it went back to being lodging.
You
even before even before the new building code was adopted?
I believe so, for the fire code at that time required lodging to have sprinklers.
We're just giving you a heads up. We just,
I
we're informed of this
We
last week as
just-
well, so we're
I was
going to
wondering if there's an
evaluate
issue
it.
of code violations. I mean, residences downtown, I guess, are like residences elsewhere that, in terms of being grandfathered, if they do a substantial modification, then
Right.
that can trigger a requirement that they
Yes.
come up to code. But
Or a
are
change in
they
use.
subject to any different rules because they're downtown than any other residences in town?
Because they are a mixed use, they require additional, it's not just as if you were building a single-family home.
You indicated this was not the residences on like the 300 block, the
No,
200 block.
This is the 400 block,
This is residences above businesses.
correct?
He indicated he was not aware that we had any of those.
So we're working
Okay.
with them.
And so now we're evaluating that to see how long they've been there and what should have been triggered.
Okay, thank you for informing us.
Trustee Curtis.
I just to go back, thanks for your report, everything's great. I just wanted to play off of what Trustee Robertson, Farrell talked about on the Pell. Kind of one of my big concerns about it, why we were against it, was just arbitrarily worrying about traffic through lines and stopping McConnell, not worrying about all the way through. You kind of looked at me and mentioned that you guys did discuss why they just ended back there when they bring a highway all the way to a T or to a Y, and then weren't concerned about it, so. What was their response?
It was really more of, we inquired if there was any plans to do any studies on Highway 36, and they do not have that anywhere in the, in their future forecast, close future to look at that. But that they fully understood that there is this problem. I'm not sure they really all knew that in the room. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think those who have been here in the summer maybe did, but for a few of them, I don't think they realized it backs up sometimes almost to hygiene. And, but they just reassured us that the traffic along 66 and coming into town, what they were proposing, it wouldn't change any of the lanes,
So,
And
in Boulder County, they had at one time expanded to 4 lanes between Longmont and Lyons, and Boulder County pushed back and said, we only want 2, and they listened, and so there's only 2, except for where there's a significant turn, and then they expanded 3.
And we also got the opportunity to explain some of our commercial and residential challenges with so much of the community going into the floodplain, and with the most current maps. And we did talk a little proactively about, is there a possibility that we could have some place to park cars in the summer so buses could take them up to Estes Park to reduce some of that congestion? We talked a little bit that way, but they did not commit to any specific plan right now. But I did feel confident that the Region 4 director was pretty eye-opening, I think, for her. And she said, again, this would be the first step to, let's get that changed in the document, and that changes the whole flow, potentially the speeds, access, everything.
They did say that with the change in director, a lot of things have opened that weren't before. So there's a new possibility they don't even know off the top of their head. So, that's one of the reasons they brought forth the change in status. It hasn't been tried here before, but it's worth trying it now.
That was one of my biggest concerns was, as we talked about many times before, why you do a study, you're talking about, worry about flows, want to make it smoother, well, then they just end it. As you bring something into town, you got a whole town with the downtown that a lot of pedestrian traffic in the summers, it just doesn't make sense. So when you're teaching those kids in your class, remind them of just don't stop in the middle of the town. Kind of figure it out going through town. It helps.
We mentioned,
Good.
it was really a
That's-
good discussion. We talked about, the traffic that's going through the neighborhoods now because of this
Yeah.
standstill on our main street, and, you know, this push-pull relationship between wanting them to come down your main street in the hopes people will shop versus moving them along. Yeah, we had a good discussion. I think it was just overall good. There was a lot of brand-new people to CDOT.
Because we don't want to see an accidental bottleneck somewhere that's worse than it is.
No, sure.
Because should that summer fire occur and emergency evacuation comes down, he's got a real problem.
Yeah.
It could be it could.
No, it
Yeah,
was
so
it was a good
so
meeting.
stopping on one side of town, not going all the way through, just raises all kinds of red flags. So I'm glad you guys talked about it. They're aware of it. Hopefully they.
It was a good
continue to look
start,
at it.
a good
Good,
start, I
perfect.
think.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay, are there any other questions for the administrator report? If not, we go on to the legal update.
Oh, and then you're supposed to give an update on,
So the Board of Trustees packets will be ready to be picked up if you're going to run for mayor or trustee on January 7th, and they will be due back to the town hall January 27th. So you have 20 days to get your signatures and get your packet turned in.
Okay, so now, legal update?
Yeah, so we added a new section to the agenda called legal report. I'm not always going to have something for legal report, but we thought it was a good placeholder to have given some of the recent things going on. It's something I see in a lot of the other towns and cities I represent. And so I have nothing today to report, but I just want to let you know it's going to be a reoccurring thing where we have a placeholder for public legal report on the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, so now this brings us to the point in the agenda where we entertain audience business, which overall is limited to about 15 minutes, with all comments limited, individual comments limited to 4 minutes per person. So is there anyone who would like to come forward for audience business? Okay. And we do ask you to give your name and address, and then address the board.
My name and address.
Yes.
Green button, you can't hear me here? Am I good? Okay. Put your mouth on the microphone. I'm Craig Engelhorn, 727 2nd Avenue, Lyons, Colorado. On the Stickney Alley, which when the traffic backs up, if you guys know the Stickney Alley, people drive down that alley trying to get through town. So, and just as an aside before I get started, we'd like to support anything you do with the access control plan and PEL for that section between McConnell and Highway 36 on 66, because as Spirit Hound Distillers, you know, we're right at the apex of just kind of a giant pain in the ass, honestly. Pardon me, strike that word from the record. I'm here to talk about copper in the water. I think some people have kind of pointed toward us as potentially a major contributor of copper, and one of the reasons our copper levels are going above the limits coming out of our treatment plant. Myself, just want to tell you that you know, we've been aware of the reduction in the limit since February 22nd of 2017, when we had a meeting with Victoria and Joe Kabbalah. Having said that, that doesn't mean we were, you know, panicked about it, because we don't really know what our contribution is. And I have been in conversation with Wayne Ramey of Ramey Engineering since July. We had a plan to put together a sampling program so we could sample our tanks at the distillery so we can get some real data. And just because life is what it is, we haven't had a chance to actually implement that. I called Wayne this morning, and we're going to get together very soon, probably tomorrow, and start doing a sampling so that we can actually see what contribution Spirit Hound is doing. And just to, so you know, and so it's on public record, we're you know, obviously happy to, you know, help mitigate our portion of that so that the town can keep their plant in compliance and not out of compliance. And I won't take up any more of your time. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Come on. And even you have to give your name and address.
Dan Greenberg,
For the
827
record.
3rd Avenue. I'm here because I missed Friday night, and I want to say thank you to Deb for serving the town for so long. It was wonderful working with you. Thank you very much. Best wishes.
I always like being with you too. Thank you.
very nice.
Okay.
Well, that inspired me. Congratulations, Deb, on your retirement, and I don't know who I'm going to harass now down at Town Hall.
Name and address.
I'm sure I'll find somebody. Thank you.
Benita. Name and address for the record.
What?
Name and address for the record, please.
Oh, 401 Second Avenue, Benita Yoder.
Okay, I think that's everyone in the audience who's eligible, right? Anybody else want to come forward? If not, we will close audience business. And move on to the consent agenda.
I know. Let's see if I can get through it without screwing something up, huh?
Would anyone on the board like to remove any items on the consent agenda?
Take that, Kate.
Yeah, take a few.
And hearing none, entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Oh, you didn't want me to read it all?
Oh, I'm sorry, please read them out.
I mean, I don't mind not reading them all.
It's a requirement of law that you read the consent agenda, so.
That's right, your last reading of the consent agenda.
Deb, if you don't read them, we'll have to have a special meeting so you can come back,
Come back.
and read them. So
Okay.
I would recommend.
All right, Resolution 2019-140 is a resolution ratifying the amendment, or the Fourth and Fifth Amendments to the Disaster Recovery Services Agreement with OTEC Loris and Associates for the Second Avenue Bridge project design. Resolution 2019-141 is a resolution approving the Second Amendment of the construction agreement with Roberts Excavation Corporation, Lions Valley River Park Construction Project PW20F. Resolution 2019-142 is approving a Second Amendment to the professional services agreement with Interwest Consulting Engineer. And this project is for consulting services, professional civil engineering, 2018 engineer. And I think that was supposed to be 19. I think that was a typo on my part. Resolution 2019-143 is a resolution memorializing the modification or alteration of minor event restrictions set forth in Section C5 of the keynotes to the conceptual plan for Planet Bluegrass Farm annexation for 2020 minor events only. 2019-145 is a resolution approving the contract with Trident Protection Services for Lions Parks for 2020. Resolution 2019-146 is a resolution to approve the Fifth Amendment to the construction agreement with Walsh Construction for Bowen Park Phase 2, and this is Public Works Project 20E-2. And Resolution 2019-144 is a resolution to execute a permanent utility easement with Craig Ferguson and Jerry Moore for the Apple Valley Waterline Project 900. The resolution 2019-147 has been moved to the January 6th meeting. Resolution 2019-148 is a resolution providing for additions, appropriations during the fiscal year 2019 for unaccepted 2019 revenues and expenditures required of the town of Lyons, Colorado. Resolution 2019-149 is a resolution approving the Second Amendment of the Professional Services Agreement with Enline Electric. Resolution 2019-150 is a resolution approving a professional services agreement with Charles Abbott Associates for building services. Resolution 2019-151 is a resolution submitting to registered electors of the Town of Lyons to permit the publication of ordinances by title only and the issue of eliminating the requirement that payments of bills and statements concerning contracts and rebates be published. The December 2019 accounts payable and the December 2nd, 2019 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
So does Dolores know she's going to have that long of a speaking part?
She does.
Okay, so now I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I can second that.
Okay. And I'll call for the vote. The hand vote, right. All in favor, aye, put up your hand. Aye. Okay. Passes 6-0. So we move on to general business, update and direction to staff relative to the Fourth Avenue pedestrian bridge, which we had our workshop to discuss. Staff want to introduce the topic?
Sure. We had a workshop this evening to discuss the updated opinion of cost on not only the Fourth Avenue Ped Bridge, but also the entire length of the Safe Routes to School grant application, which runs from the basically the Bone Park Ped Bridge up Fourth Avenue all the way to the elementary school. So we looked at the different segments of the planned proposals to put in sidewalks, bike paths, multimodal trails, the Ped Bridge itself, striping, parking for the entire length. And the project costs came in significantly higher than they did several years ago when it included only the Ped Bridge. And so the new costs for that project are estimated to be closer to $855,000, of which we have $500,000 eligible or granted through Safe Routes to Schools, but we would have to match $355,000 to be able to start that project. Staff presented several grant opportunities that might be available to apply for those funds, as well as discussed maybe some local fundraising and the recent anonymous donation of $100,000 toward Park and Rec that might be eligible for this as well. So we would like direction from the board on if they want to continue to pursue raising $355,000 that we do not have in our 2020 budget to try to still be able to secure this grant and implement this capital improvement.
Okay, do we have comments from the board? This could build into direction to staff. Trustee Carvis.
Just one of the last things you just talked about, the $100,000 donation in parks. I know the mayor indicated putting in favor of using it there. Others may have said that too. But also, if you remember reading our consent agenda, we are over budget on Bone Park Phase 2. If you look at it and what we were approved, and there's things in there that aren't going to get covered, and we're not done yet. And as I've said many times before, with grants, we seem to be paying out of our keister, out of our own pockets, additional things. So I would love to see staff go after as much money, assuming this $100,000 is not available at all, and get funding elsewhere if we can. And hopefully we can get a better hand in spring of what's going on with Bone Park Phase 2.
I can barely see you.
Trustee Miller.
I would 100% agree with Trustee Caravas here. I think you should try for any grant you possibly can get. And I think we also have, we would have huge community support here for fundraising. I also think that we have folks in this town who would donate their time and abilities and equipment to do some of the work, since that's an option here with this one. Because in the past, that's been brought up several times. Why can't we just do it ourselves? Why can't we just? So now they can do it. And, you know, I think that, yeah, I think there's a good chance that that'll happen.
Trustee Browning.
Yes, and just for those who may not have been present or at the workshop, I think the general consensus of the board was clear that this is one of the highest priority items we have. My opinion is perhaps next to the Second Avenue Bridge, this is the most important. It does so many things for the community. It potentially connects 2 of our 3 parks. It connects the library, very importantly the school access. It reattaches the Confluence community that suffered greatly from the flood and that a lot of people put a lot of time into rebuilding to the rest of town. It's consistent with the master plan that's existed for a long time to have Fourth Avenue be the main north-south access area in town. And I'd point out, even if we went back and limited ourselves to what was initially envisioned, and let's just do the ped bridge only, and the rest of the street stuff is nice, but we really can't do that. If you're looking at the cost of the bridge only right now, it's estimated to be $370,000. So if we didn't have the Safe Routes to School grant, and we were just trying to do the ped bridge, we'd have to come up with $370,000. Under the estimates we have now, we'll have to come up with $355,000, hopefully with some grants, looking at our own resources as well, contributions from the community. So to have a bridge there, even if we just did the bridge, we're going to have to work on fundraising. And potentially we work on a little bit less fundraising and have a much more beneficial project connecting parks, libraries, schools, and maybe someday out to Highway 7, even to the Hall Ranch and through the Martin parcel. Anyway, so I'm highly in favor of proceeding with this, and I think eventually we'll find a way to raise the $355,000. And the finance director, Jill Johnson, has mentioned a couple of times that when all the year-end numbers are in, we'll look and see, did we have more tax collections than we budgeted for, and if so, what do we do with the excess? And this is certainly one thing that we should put on the list of things to look at, is if we have 75,000, that's a pulled out of thin air number of extra revenue beyond budget, maybe we set aside that for matching funds to approach some of these foundations on grants and things. So anyway, I'm highly in favor of this project.
And just to build on Trustee Browning's thoughts on budget, I'm wondering about the comment that the proceeds from the sale of the Eastern Corridor is not in the budget. And so what I'm wondering, if we could possibly reprogram that to help with the bridge, if and when it comes in.
You'll have a fight from the UEB. Comes from the funds, should go to the
That's
fund.
right, it's
But
the wrong
it's-
funds. Right.
But worth a discussion.
Okay, there are other comments relative to direction to staff?
I have a question.
It's next.
Trustee
I have a question. When you talked about the Lions Community Foundation funds, they're based out of in Boulder, the Boulder Community Foundation. You've explained some stuff to me in the past, but I've never. Is that just strictly the funds they raise here, but it just sits there as an account? And so so when we look at not only LCF, can we also include Boulder County as a requesting from them, the foundation?
Right, maybe.
Because it is affecting the children that live in Boulder County. So expand not just our own foundation, or are they one and the same anyway, or they just run the funds through there? How's that?
Our local foundation runs through Boulder
Okay.
Community
So-
Foundation. But I don't know the answer to the other part of that, if this would be eligible for other financing.
But I'm not knowing what all the different, I know there's a lot of donations that go into the Boulder County Foundation. And so, yeah, might as well. It helps Boulder County, it helps a lot of people. It also can move traffic around when we have busy summers. That helps Boulder County tax collection, so.
I joked with Jill the other day, I said, can we take the 8,000 Parade of Lights revenue for the bridge? I know. It was a start.
Thank you.
Trustee Browning?
I was going to answer your question. The Lions Community Foundation is not itself a 501c3, so it can't directly take tax-deductible donations. So it affiliates with the Boulder County, Boulder Community Foundation, which is a 501c3, but they have a separate fund. So if you donate to the Boulder Community Foundation and designate it for the Lions Community Foundation, it's tax-deductible and it goes to the LCF. It's just an administrative procedure.
We can also then ask for additional.
And that's, I would like to get the LCF involved. If we're raising money in the community for this project, I think they need to be involved, yeah.
That's why we couldn't find it on Colorado Gives Day.
So since I'm coming in late, thank you, and I appreciate you letting me go do that. It was important to my daughter. They were great.
If I could summarize the direction to staff, right now it would be that you want staff to pursue applying for as many grants as possible in the hopes of maybe collecting all $355,000 to save the $100,000 for other Bone Park projects that might have an overrun. And pursue also fundraising potentially through local groups if possible. Okay. And I do want to just remind the board that I don't have anyone on staff who's a grant writer. So I would guess that this will fall under Kim's duties, but it looked like most of those were due in March and April. So just please keep that in mind, because grant writing does take time and they're all a little different. And we'll be giving Kim as much support as we can. But if you know of someone who might be interested in volunteering some time for that, we sure appreciate it.
Is that one of the services, library office? Grant right here. We got everything else.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I did want to stress that I think we want to give some lead time to the development of the community support and so that it's not like, well, next week could you come out, but rather,
We'll have to put together a campaign.
Yeah, a campaign to get people kind of energized about it and, maybe put together some cool graphics and slogans and so forth to really get because as was mentioned, particularly by Trustee Miller, that this is an opportunity for people to put the shovel where their mouth is and do some stuff.
Yeah, I'm coming in late, but actually, what I think whenever you apply for these grants, if we've actually committed and said we want to raise $50,000 for our skin in the game for this project versus trying to cover it all through grants, I think we get a better shot actually at the grants themselves. So I would encourage you to kind of put a stake in the ground on what that, target is and incorporate it into the grants and build and start that. I think saying the same thing, maybe a little bit different way, but saying there's a real advantage in the grant funding process if you do it that way. Yeah, Trustee Roberts.
And perhaps you're already ahead of me on this thought, but I would suggest the campaign, perhaps just an education message so that we can convey how we got here with the bridge and why it's taking us so long and the challenges. And this would be just as good for the residents before the flood as those who've moved into that corridor recently and since the flood. And I think my opinion is that would go a long way to making people feel motivated to be part of the team. Yes. Yes, thank you.
No, you have a slogan.
Great slogan.
It's a good idea.
That's right, bridge back down.
Done. Okay. Our work is done.
If I may.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Trustee Fair.
I actually do know somebody who has a lot of experience in grant writing. Don't know their availability, but I've got a note and I'll approach them tomorrow.
Great, and if you could just let me know.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Were any items pulled from the consent agenda?
We wrote it down.
Yes.
They pulled them all, just hurry.
This is, we don't want to let you go that easily. So the next item is a discussion for future agenda items. I'm going to recuse myself for this. I'm back just in time to let myself go. It's a simple agenda item, but I'm going to let you continue. I'll go get another snack.
So this, that document didn't open. Wastewater testing cover sheet.
You know what, I've copied this stuff because that whole thing got all messed up. So
Yeah,
you
it
guys
says,
need a
whoops,
copy?
something went
Yeah.
wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, if we can distribute that, and then we can take 5 minutes to read it. So we have a good,
That gives some time.
And here's the one that, that's what Aaron put together, and this is what Trustee Browning had put together.
Yes, and Erin Kaplan should be joining us any minute. So.
Okay, you want-
Have a Merry Christmas, Susan. Happy New
holidays.
Year. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Thanks.
Is Aaron coming at a particular time?
He's at the same concert the mayor was at, waiting for his,
Did he say he was gonna fly?
he told me to text him, and I did about 10 minutes ago and said he was going to come in.
Okay, so in terms of principles of authorship, might want to kick the discussion off with Trustee Brown.
Yeah, I just read this new thing from this combination UEB Chair Kaplan and Acting Utilities Director Kaplan, and it says some of the things that I wanted to say. The UEB did a presentation to us on November 18th about pretreatment ordinances, but included as part of that was monitoring and testing procedures and facilities. And that kind of got me to looking at some other cities in terms of what do they do for testing and monitoring, because we hear over and over when issues of BOD compliance or now copper compliance, and some year it could be total suspended silence compliance. When those come up, we hear the same thing every time, which is we can't really identify the particular source of the problem. But the question is, why not? And the answer is we don't have the ability to test individual businesses or residences that we think might be a problem. And that raises another question. Why not? Well, one reason is it's not in our code. We don't have the legal authority as a town right now to require any residence or business that we think may be a likely contributor to our BOD problem, our copper problem, or any other problem to put in a testing port. And I started looking at provisions in other towns' codes, and they've all got them, but we don't have them. And it seems to me like this is really step one in the process. Pretreatment can be a big, extensive ordinance, or it can be a general thing that says, you shall pretreat when directed by the town to do so. But those are relatively complicated to draft. The idea of putting in a testing port, which is really a small manhole, is pretty easy to draft, and it seems pretty common, and to me it almost seems like a no-brainer. It's something we should have had a long time ago. Other cities have it, and we don't have it. I went to the UEB meeting on December the 4th to discuss this with them, and what they had to say is basically what you see in Aaron's report tonight, which is they were in favor of it, but they wanted to add a more specific requirement to the basic, you shall put in a monitoring system when directed by the town to do so, to specifically say those in the high-strength waste category ought to be required to do this by a date certain. And that sounds like a welcome addition to me. So I really went and sampled. I pulled little parts of the Idaho Springs, Boulder, and Longmont ordinances just as a working draft to have something to discuss. Idaho Springs in particular, because they have a brand new wastewater treatment plant. They also have had some expanded breweries and things there that they had to deal with the potential effect on their new wastewater treatment plant. So it seemed like to me that was a good model. Couple of other reminders back. I think it was last fall, we had a workshop with JVA, and who was in communication with the CDPHE, and they made it very clear, JVA did, that the CDPHE was basically expecting the town of Lyons to do something to start addressing these problems. Another bit of looking I did was to talk to the staff person at the Longmont, in the Longmont Wastewater Services Department, who's in charge of their testing, and she told me what they did. And when they identify someone that may be a significant contributor to their wastewater treatment plant, they do require monitoring and testing. Now theirs is way bigger and deals with a lot more dilution from a lot more people, so the level that someone has to, that a business in particular has to reach to trigger their monitoring requirements is way higher than ours, because they're dealing with 100,000 people instead of 2,000 people, but the principle is the same. And by the way, in talking to that staffer, she had some, I don't know if she talked with Victoria before, but she had some familiarity with the Lions situation. And I mentioned that our town attorney had told us at the November 18th meeting that if we didn't start doing something, that the EPA might do it for us. And she said, he's exactly right. She talks to the EPA all the time, and she could assure me that Lions is on the EPA's radar screen. So we just got a notice from CDPHE, which was after I talked to her. We know the EPA is looking at us, and I think we can't just sit here with what we've got now. We've got to do something, and this seemed like to me the testing facilities is the first step. The pretreatment ordinance would be the second step, but at least let's move forward. Do the simple first step first, because I don't really think we can delay this anymore, and we shouldn't have to keep hearing. We don't really know where it's coming from because we don't have any ability to test a business. Well, it's our own fault that we don't, because it's not in our code, and we can't require any wastewater customer to put in a testing facility if we want to. So let's get it in the code and give the staff the discretion to do it, and let's do it sooner rather than later. And this is just a draft. I'm sure the town attorney can improve on it, and I think my suggestion is take the UEB's advice as recommended, and let's add a provision to it that does require anybody in the high, there's a category, it's low, medium, high, and then significant industrial user. I don't think we have any significant industrial users at the moment, but it probably still ought to be in the code that it's mandatory, because maybe we'll get one someday, who knows. So it ought to be in there just to give us the authority if we ever get one. So I just endorsed everything. I just endorsed everything you said. So in terms of an agenda request, I would like to ask the board to consider directing staff, primarily the town attorney, but also the acting utilities director, to prepare us a draft ordinance on manholes and testing ports and present it to us as quickly as we can. And then as soon as we can get a pretreatment ordinance, that too. But let's at least get this first simple step done.
Trustee Carvis?
And it would be perfect timing, because the UEB has been for the last year or so rerouting Section 13. So I believe they are at the almost finished stage and being reviewed by the attorney. So this would be a perfect time, and wouldn't waste resources of getting it in, something put in there and started.
Trustee Mellon?
I 100% agree with both of these trustees sitting right next to me.
Is Mr. Kaplan, you're going to make a presentation, or you're here for questions?
Okay, I didn't know what you guys had so far.
Okay.
We went over it.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So,
Just that, or
We read manhole and testing. Yeah.
you have, well, right, but I could do presentation, right? Mine had more of actually putting it on for those who are already in the high-strength waste category.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about.
So what would happen is you could do, if they direct us to move forward with the ordinance, then you can do a formal presentation.
okay.
Something I would add, just based on previous experience with Littleton, is a provision that any reported data from the monitoring devices, whether it be self-reported or collected by the city, be public data subject to inspection and not a trade secret or confidential, because some enterprising business owners may claim that it's confidential information, and you have troubles enforcing the ordinance. And if it's publicly available data, then it's admissible in court at all times. It's self-authenticating. And so it helps clear up some of the issues around proving noncompliance.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So as far as the monitoring equipment and the monitoring schedule or self-reporting, I guess I've read a number of different things that don't seem consistent. Are we proposing requiring self-reporting of periodic monitoring, or are we considering a monitoring schedule that's unknown to the contributor, to the business owner? I mean, it seems pretty obvious that the other issues we have with BOD TSS come sporadically and in perhaps large dumping from a processing activity. And if we create a system where it's a self-reporting procedure, then there would be no reason to produce the wastewater at the same time as the measurements being done. And I believe we just had a discussion about the equipment that measures the effluent from our plant. It's persistent monitoring system. Is that correct? We do self-report, but
Right, it's not by persistent, it's always there.
Mhm.
No, like when we measure the BOD, it just gets taken, in the past, that had been part of the problem, we were only taking it quarterly, done 4 times a year. Now we're doing it, it might be up to weekly now.
but it's done manually. Yeah. Right. We don't know I guess I was just sort of thinking of a comparison between what we have to do and what we might be asking our wastewater customers to do. But this sort of brings to mind the trust but verify concept. Is that it feels to me that we should be in control of making the measurements and it not be a system that can be easily eluded or at all. I mean, I visited a small manufacturer in Boulder in 1995 that was required by the city to have a automated, persistent copper measurement device because they produce copper, and so that's 25 years ago almost. It seems like a normal thing to do. So I guess that summary that my question: are we proposing to have a self-reporting, or are we contemplating automated and persistent measurement systems?
I didn't know about automated, but I thought we would be deciding when the testing would be, the town could decide. I think that's something that needs to be discussed and worked on.
But perhaps not like show up in a town truck with a red hat on and, is there a way to sort of do it inconspicuously?
We'd have to see how we work the code. I did have I could send you what one town I read, talking about where they want them to be, accessible, so that somebody doesn't have to be there. Although there are times if something is hazardous or proprietary where they couldn't do that, you may have to make exceptions. I think there's some details to work out there. One thought was, why not test when we test at the plant? And then we know if it's high, we expect to see it high. Just one sort of thought, right? If we have the people coming out, because I'm pretty sure that's not random at all. We know when we're doing it. I don't know if there are any random tests that come out.
We've done it both ways on occasion, but I would think that if the monitoring well is accessible to our provider, or whoever we would hire to maybe check to do those, it could be fairly unexpected. Not totally, but they show up to do it at our plant and then they go out and do a testing sample of several. So it would be unexpected for the provider. So it's not always collected after a certain discharge might have.
Yeah, I just have a hard time reconciling, like, what's the value if we can't integrate the measurement with the volume? Yeah. And if there was perhaps a device that was triggered by flow, I mean, I think how long does it take to empty a 1,000-gallon container, for example? It's not really, I mean, it shows up with our plant and then we have the problem. I had one other question, which is that we don't treat copper, right? We don't have any expectation for our plant to remove it. Is that correct?
I believe so. I don't think there's any methods in there to remove the copper.
So given that we have limits on how much copper can be in the effluent, it seems logical that we must entirely restrict from what's coming into the plant. There's no other means of reducing, right?
Right, you can't. You're not supposed to thin the water, which because it's so much copper for the volume, but you can't just try to do that. So we would have to look into the specifics of also what the re-rating is going to allow or not allow. We really need some numbers to just determine what's acceptable for an individual customer compared to what's acceptable for the whole
I think perhaps we may have brought up this issue in the past, is that if there's a potential for conflict over if the town staff has a great deal of leeway for deciding who has to be regulated and in what manner, that it's opportunity for being accused of a favoritism or conflict of interest, and perhaps we would want to focus on establishing enough standardization so that there's some cover for that. I think perhaps.
The proposal was that anyone in the high-strength waste category, because by the definition, you're in that category because you're an industry that could produce high-strength waste. So anyone who falls in that category.
Okay, just as a point of order, the item on the agenda is discussion for a future agenda item, and so we're going several levels deep into
Okay,
the.
I apologize.
And so what it sounds like is that the board is very much in favor of very quickly.
I'd like to voice something that's not necessarily totally in favor.
Okay.
So, before the conclusion, I guess.
You have the.
Okay. So it's not that I'm against this, and I definitely think that this should be a part of a future. However, I don't know that we have necessarily, I have not heard that we have necessarily followed some very beginning simple procedures yet. We had a business that has come in to say in front of us earlier this evening what discussions, and so I know you can't answer that this evening, but I would like to hear that when we bring this up for the future, what proactive discussions are we having with these businesses? And I'd like to know specifically what feedback have we gotten, what compliances could possibly be there that are in the process. So I want to hear that before I'm going to be ready to say I'm for going down this total road of an ordinance. But I think that needs to be a part of the discussion. So I just really want to ask for that element as you come in with your presentation.
We do have some, like the business license, every year when they renew their license, they have to fill out the questionnaire of what their waste is. And there's discussion on high-strength waste and a lot about the BOD in that. So that is just one example.
Okay.
But just to be clear, I don't hear you being opposed to having the discussion and direction on the agenda.
No, but because a lot was being voiced, I felt like I wanted to make sure that that element was going to be a part of the discussion when we come to it.
You want some outreach as part of this effort to roll this out.
And I want to hear about that outreach before we're making this full decision on an ordinance, is my request. Thank you.
And just to build on that slightly would be that in the discussion, we're prepared to look at what authority we want the town to have relative to some of the earlier discussion, just, what level. Yeah, random versus scheduled versus perhaps all of those.
And just as a little bit of background, I mean, it's typical there be, and I think that what Trustee Browning is proposing includes random sampling by the town. And in fact, I'm just looking at Littleton's ordinance I've talked about many times. I mean, if you do not allow the random or anyhow prevent the random sampling, then you basically get shut off. It's a violation of the town code, and the town can pull your permit. So, and that's what EPA requires as part of their pre-treatment ordinance. So that's kind of, what the maximum amount of control can be. But I think random sampling is pretty common, though, and it's kind of what has been envisioned here.
Okay, do we need,
I just had a question.
Sorry.
Do we not already have some narrative from staff about efforts already to try to mitigate these problems with the outreach to businesses? Because Administrator Simons, you did mention specifically you work with homeowners. Yeah.
We are mandated under, everyone's not working, we're mandated under another copper rule to do household testing. But in regard to the, and we are doing that with a select group of people, and it will take place over years unless they change out their pipes. For the business community, for those that we know are dealing in heavy metals, we have reached out to them. We've sent Wayne Ramey out to some of them on numerous occasions to work with them. And I think that this latest letter from CDPHE, I think it helps them to understand that this is very serious and it's not just the town. So we'll continue to work with folks, but we've been talking about the potential of monitoring wells for those high heavy metal users specifically. Now, at some point, it could be required for other industries as well, and I think we have to keep that in mind. At some point, pharmaceuticals are going to get monitored, and at some point, what's the other one coming down? Not nitrogen. phos. There's a couple new other state mandates coming down the road as well regarding our water. And because we have to remember, this isn't only a wastewater issue, it becomes a water issue, water quality issue. So I think that this is really something that is long overdue as well. I think most communities have had monitoring abilities for years, and it's not meant to pick on any one person. I think at any point it could be BOD, it could be fats, oils, and greases, it could be heavy metals, it could be pharmaceuticals, it could be a myriad of items that need to be tested for. So I personally think this is overdue, and I'm happy to continue to do outreach to those businesses that we know are working with heavy metals, because it's not just copper. It's only, in this situation, copper was identified as being over the limits 3 times in a row. So that's why this is now kind of on their radar. It could be other items that could be identified in the future. So I think, and we also reached out, I know that through Kim's department, we reached out and told people, we're looking at this monitoring. If you want to voluntarily do that, there's a revolving loan fund available that you could take a loan out. It would be around $3,000 to $3,500 potentially for a manhole to be put into place. And this is available to you at very low interest if you want to do it voluntarily before the town has something. So we have done some outreach. Can we do more? Of course, we always can. And we'll put that on our radar. Actually, Aaron and I just Friday identified a business that wasn't on our radar that very well might be doing some type of electroplating. So we're going to reach out to them this week and say, hey, what are you guys doing over there? Because on your business license, it says you're manufacturing these things. So as we identify them, we'll certainly work with them. And I think tonight was a really great effort on the part of the distillery in particular to, to understand that they might have, an impact in this area too, but by no means is it only them. So, yeah, we'll continue to reach out, and we'll put some materials together and make sure we get it to those folks we're aware of and those high-strength users. So if they want to weigh in during a public hearing, if you move this to ordinance, they'll have that opportunity. But we can
Do we want to include in the discussion the potential for the town to have authority but not a duty relative to residential monitoring?
I don't know, is that commonplace?
Right, no, we didn't have anything for the residential. And the code from the EPA or the state, I haven't seen anything requiring.
And those we test out of their faucets, because it would be copper coming off their water lines, going into the wastewater system.
Yeah.
So residential is a little different. Residential, you can test off of just their taps.
Yeah, but that's
So
what.
we don't have to have a monitoring well.
But having the authority to do that as well
Oh.
is really what I'm.
I suppose you should always, when you write an ordinance, have the ability to, if there's an exception.
Yeah, have the authority to do it, but not a duty or a
Sure.
schedule, that sort of thing.
Sure, because I suppose you could have someone in their home working with heavy metals and copper of some sort and not realizing that when they're rinsing it off,
Yeah, so,
still I have in my garage?
or if you have a copper still in your garage.
well, what I'm
Yes.
thinking is that, so the town would be able to, for example, if they would test all of the water coming from Eagle Canyon, for example,
Oh,
then to work back to individual homes if it were,
sure,
just
necessary.
have the authority to do that without
Sure.
it being something everybody has to put up.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think, mandatory sampling of residential homes is not something you find in any ordinance, but the ability to have inspection, I think utility inspections generally, which we might include in our enforcement section, which we're revising, would be a good thing. That would cover this.
Thank you all.
Just
Trustee Pearl, yeah.
one last thought. I'd also like to get an update on what the re-rating of our plant would be, because if that's going to be expanded at all, how does this fall into all of that? So I kind of want to know where we are in the re-rating of the plant's process and how it affects the ordinance. So, and obviously, let's not discuss it now, but that could be a part of the process, please. Thank you.
I can give you a brief update in that. I mean, I've received emails today on this, and that it's close. They'd like to get it done next couple of weeks. There's a few things I need to work out in terms of the documentation, it sounds like. And copper mitigation might be a part of that final approval. Some sort of step towards copper mitigation.
They want to see that we're taking steps toward that before they issue our re-rating. So this almost needs to happen to be able to get that re-rating.
Okay, so is direction for staff clear on where we're going? Is everybody okay on board?
Yep.
Okay, so let's get the mayor back in. Connie? Are you still here?
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Did you get to see yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was over.
Sorry. We'd like to chat.
You got some correspondence with
I think you're on it.
All right.
Which I think.
So we're at trustee reports.
All righty. Anybody want to go first? Go ahead, trustee Koenig.
The so SFC had an informal meeting, kind of a Christmas get-together thing at somebody's house. They didn't make any decisions or anything last week, but there was discussion about several members' desire to, what's the right word, represent the pay-as-you-throw single hauler thing, and they've noticed, I believe, a special meeting, the SFC, for Wednesday or Thursday, I forget which one, of this week to discuss that, because they didn't want to take any action at this informal meeting. So they may be approaching the board, if they decide to do so, to look at that issue again. So just wanted to relay that subject of discussion at the SFC.
Okay. Trustee Miller.
So we met last Tuesday, the Housing and Human Services Commission, and we had someone there from the census, the 2020 census recruit, who they said we desperately need people for Boulder County. So if you all know anybody that needs a job, they're hiring for office, recruiters, door-to-door people. $16 to $20 an hour for pay, and it doesn't, if you have any social benefits, it doesn't work against those in any way. So you can't lose those if you make too much money through this. So let's see what else. The Z-Trip / Boulder County 25,000 transportation grant has been pretty much finalized. There's just a few small kinks to work out, such as how many vouchers do we hand out at a time per person? It's basically open to anybody who needs to use it between the hours of 8 and, I believe, 4:30, maybe 4. You have to have a voucher either way. You can pick the vouchers up at Town Hall, well, itself, or oh, you do? Okay. Here.
So just Z-Chirp was supposed to be at one point in time on this agenda for approval. After looking over the documents, having some concerns and talking about those concerns to Boulder County, I learned that they too share the concerns about not necessarily the substance of the program, but it's kind of how it was executed.
Okay.
And so Boulder County's attorneys are looking at trying to create either an IGA or a tri-party contract, just trying to clear up some of these issues, because the contracting and execution just really wasn't done right. And so we're trying to clear up, some of the which party bears which responsibilities and things like governmental unity, and those things just weren't really thought out in the original attempt to draw up the contracts. And so Boulder County and myself are trying to take a second stab at this so the program can be set up in a proper way.
Perfect. Well, there you have it. So it's supposed to kick off in January. We're hoping
to have it on the January 6th agenda.
Okay.
But it's really up to Boulder County at this point, since they're the ones providing all the funding.
Yeah.
It's really up to their attorneys whether they are comfortable with a three-party contract, which is not always advisable, or whether they'd rather do a separate contract with Z-Trip and then IGA between the town and Boulder County. That's really in their court right now.
Got it. Okay. Well, good to know. Thank you.
Trustee Caravas.
First, I'd like to tell staff, I think this is the best looking Christmas area with town hall I've seen since I've been here. So congratulations to all of you. And the real reason it was done this way, thank you, Deb, for all you've done. It's been great getting to know you just the 3 years I've been here. I'm sure others have many more stories still they'll tell us once you're gone. So thank you for everything you've done and appreciate it very much. Some of us on the UEB will be going up to Loveland tomorrow to visit their electric, forgot what Jim said. What is it? Utilities. Their provider on just basic tour, how things are going. Since Aaron is in the middle of looking over the contracts or the proposals for our meters. So how's that going? Yeah. We have a UEB meeting Wednesday. Everyone show up, say hi. 4 o'clock, right? Got changed to 4 o'clock?
No, that was just for talking about the electric.
Okay, so 4:30 still. Let's see, College Board will be meeting tomorrow, 6:30. So their big discussions have been, I think as we discussed, the property parcels up in Apple Valley. So that seems to be what's on the budget. And then I think we're all still on for Thursday evening, right? Appreciation for all our boards, commissions, people, volunteers, and everything. Okay? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays to everybody.
Trustee Roberts.
I was able to attend the Lions Business Gap Study Group meeting on the 5th, and highlight for me was the opportunity to meet and speak with Asa Firestone with the Venture Lodge group for about 15 minutes, and mostly to share with him that our excitement for his company's plans and the outcomes, and try to impart to him, I guess, my perception or my feeling of empathy with the staff being spread very thin and having a lot of responsibilities, and to and expect great things, but to be patient and friendly, and things will go great. And he thought that after redeveloping a business in the county, that things are going to go really well here.
He stops by every week. He's
Yeah.
a good communicator.
Yeah, so it was a pleasure to meet him. I was glad that he was another business owner to show up to he really appreciated that we were just having those conversations also. So I had one other item. Let's see. Oh, I just had a question, if I may, about this issue of change in use on the second stories of Main Street, it just occurs to me, shouldn't we anticipate that there would be just perpetual change of use in these locations depending on the tenants or the owners, which would be sort of just customary when you have a shop owner that lives upstairs, or if they'd have a house elsewhere? I don't know if that's something we would want to move towards in our planning activities or what.
I think we're going to look at some form that people will need to fill out. I'd always thought there had been a residence above some of the businesses on the south side of Main Street, 400 block.
Oh, yeah,
And
forever.
they indicated they had no idea. And I,
Can't be true.
I think some of them probably
and
live
so
there.
I don't
so-
think there's been a change of use per se. I think they've always been residential, except for the lofts, above the barking dog, when those changed to conference rooms, but they knew those. That was the only one they said they were aware there was any occupancy on the second story. So he said that the town used to notify him whenever anybody turned over, but we don't even always know. Sometimes a business just does that and then they come tell us after the fact. So, especially like at the Shopettes, those businesses change. They don't necessarily come in until they've moved in. But so we're going to work on some form of method, whether it be just an email or updating our business license list once a quarter and sending it to them. But we'll try to be more, I think they felt like we weren't being very cooperative, but we by no means had any intention of not informing them of a use change that we were aware of. But I really honestly thought a couple of those apartments have been there for decades.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, well, and it's not, I guess I just don't know if there's a use by right or what have you for those parts of the buildings being, we expect them to use it as they decide to, whether it's for residence or for office space, or are they compelled to notify town and get a permit or something, which would trigger notifying the fire department?
Well, it comes back again to knowledge, and if we're even aware there's been a change of use. So we're going to work on that system. He just said it used to be just a word of mouth between the town and the fire district, and I think we have to have something a little more formal.
Because my thought was more general too, just to say, is that it seems that if we don't already sort of have an understanding that it's useful to be able to decide how to occupy the second floors. I mean,
We've been,
yeah,
as a group, promoting potential mixed use in
Yeah.
downtown, and there seems to be a different understanding that was even allowed.
because housing certainly sells, and if we got upstairs, if we don't have in our zoning, uses, perhaps we want to be thinking, and
Yeah.
as we go through a planning.
Yeah, like we
period.
said, this was one of those just end of last week items, and I just saw the clerk wrote a note to herself to look for the ordinance regarding that. So we will find the most up-to-date ordinance regarding mixed use downtown and make sure that gets distributed.
Trustee Farrell?
I just wanted to say how impressed I am with the Lions Arts and Humanities Commission. They really work hard, and I'm just so proud of this group of people, and I've enjoyed working with them. The Bell of Renewal, I just wanted to give you an update that they've raised $5,160 within their own different campaign and fundraisers to go towards that particular project. And I think that's a significant amount of money because I think they took to heart the feedback that we had given them last year. And it seemed really daunting to them, the idea of raising some money to go towards it, especially after the library campaign had just finished and thinking people were exhausted. But for them to still raise more than $5,000, I think is really impressive. Ursa, the bear outside of Western Stars, has sold.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Longmont bought it, the city of Longmont.
I don't know how I feel about that.
But I think it's something is written in the contract. I didn't get into the details of this, but I believe we will get about 6 or 10% of that. And she sold for $65,000.
Wow.
So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. So another example, though, of how bringing art into our community and ways that it promotes some additional economic vitality. So I just think that's a really exciting news. And the library agreed to pay for a wall hanging system, I think very much similar to what we have here for hanging art into the library. So they're paying for the whole system. We are going to have it installed. And the first show is going to we're going to correlate our quarterly shows with the library in the town hall. And then what we can do is have a reception, and it's a walking back and forth. And the first show, it has been delayed a little bit because of trying to get the system put in over there, and so that we can all have it done at the same time. So it's going to be, I think, like January 31st instead of the first week of January. But the first show at the library will be Larry Cohen's work. Yeah. So I think that's really exciting. Super. I just think that's a really special tribute. And then in here, the theme is going to be 20s, so with the new decade, 2020. So I'm not exactly sure it could be. You could interpret that as to what you would like, but we should see some interesting artwork in here as well. So just wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on the stuff that they've done. I think it's pretty cool. One of the things I wanted to ask about, and I don't expect an answer, but perhaps could be put into the administrative report, perhaps in the future, is what's the signage status for designating the difference between Stone Canyon Drive and Stone Canyon Road, if we could bring that back up. And then I had also asked about the census and trying to find out what kinds of things could we be doing as a town from a PSA standpoint. And Victoria, I know you sent me something. I didn't get to really delve into that much, but it would be kind of nice to know that we are in the process somehow of promoting the importance of that. Why is it important? How do we deal with it from people on post office boxes, even though I think most of this is going to be an online initiative. And nonetheless, if that's something we could kind of get a summary of at some point?
Sure. No, we are part of the Complete Census Count campaign for Boulder County. We're a member of that at the staff level. So we have the ability now to apply for a $2,500 grant for promotional materials. So Kim and I are getting that ready. And we're planning to do our education and promotion starting after the first of the year, after the holidays. So we'll be doing January, February, March as education. And again, I think it's going to be even more difficult without a weekly paper. But we have identified about 10 strategies to use and places we can set up a table and things. But there's just not a lot between January and March locally for us to do that. So we have a campaign plan, and we're going to put this grant in. The state set aside, I think it was either $250,000 or $2.5 million to give $2,500 grants to every community who requested it. So we're putting that in, and you'll start seeing materials in January. By April 1st, Census Day, you will be sick of all of that information. But no, we're really very excited about it. We haven't had a good count since the flood, so we're very, very excited about reaching out and finding out how many people really do live here. So we're on that one. You won't see it till January.
Okay, perfect.
Just a quick follow-on question on the census. think there's some method for anticipating additional residents as, for example, the Summit development and possibly even the Eastern Corridor, so that it's not left out of the process.
Projected population growth.
Yeah, so I just think that if you're at some meetings about it, that to bring that up to see if there, what that method is. I attended a meeting which there was some reference to that. The substance of the PCDC activity was reported in the administrator's report. I just would augment it by saying I was really impressed by the PCDC individuals, commissioners, who each took time to go out to the properties in Apple Valley to really look at them and add their perspective based on the information that Boulder County gave to us. They're really taking it seriously, and hopefully we'll have a good recommendation soon. I just have to say how much fun it was. I mean, it was a blast driving the truck that pulled the sand sled. That was the most fun ever. I loved it. And, Lions volunteers had a lot of fun putting together that sled. It really was, that was one of those fun projects. And I think the next project is we're going to build a bear, and I think we're going to see if we can get $60 for it. That's right. Yeah, Kathy Rivers spent and she's a professional who makes her living at this, but she dedicated several hours of her time painting that, and it made this sort of pile of lumber into something that looked really nice, and so thank her so much. She really invested some time and talent. And then one other thing I'd like to just add to Trustee Browning's comment about the maybe bringing up the pay-as-you-throw question again. I'd spent some time after the last meeting trying to think it through, and I finally put it in writing to some degree, with the perspective on the objections that have been raised. And after some discussion with Dan Madge and with Trustee Farrell, I'm more leaning toward moving forward with some form of pay-as-you-throw compared with. And so if it does come back up, I really would like to see it come back up and have some of that discussion. That's all.
All right. So I had the students had their meeting last night, and they're still really studying this vaping issue, and actually they're getting some attention from Boulder County, and now some reporters have caught on to them and their discussions, and so they've been invited to participate in a Boulder County task force, and apparently they're expecting there could be some state legislation about vaping coming up in this next session. And so there's some interest in maybe inviting some of them if they're willing. And I do have one that has said he definitely is interested in potentially testifying at the state. So they're getting some really great experience in not just the process, but how complex these issues can be. You go into it thinking that, oh, this is going to be easy. We'll just change our rules and it's all set. And they're learning very quickly that there's a lot of collaboration too that goes along. But so they've done a lot of work at this point. So I encourage them to come to the board meeting, that probably either January 6th or the next one, and give you a firsthand update on what they're doing and where their thinking is going, and what the next steps in the process might be. The Parks and Rec didn't meet this month, but I wanted to just say, because you brought up the buyout properties, they're planning on also setting a position statement to the town, similar to the Ecology Advisory Board. So we should be getting that probably the first part of January. What else do I have? I think you heard in the administrator's report, we had really good meetings with Tamburello and also with CDOT, so that was really encouraging. The only thing I would add to what was in your report is that did you mention breaking up the IGA? Okay, perfect. So that, I thought those were really good, productive meetings, and I'm excited for the rest of you to see some of the plans that Tamburello and his team have been putting together. Dr. Cog is this week on Wednesday, so I'll be going down there this week. And then, I didn't know if you had mentioned this is Deb's last meeting. I mean, it's been brought up several times, but ironically, I ran into Julie Van Dommelen at REI this weekend. And so she asked that I pass on her congratulations to you. And it's, you know, one, we're ending early for you, as long as the executive session doesn't get out of control. But I just want to add my thanks. I think, and I tried to say this at your party, and it's always hard when you have an audience to get things to come out the way you want them to, but people don't know how hard these jobs are that you guys do. And until you're really close to it, you just don't see it. And for all the things that you've done that no one will ever know or appreciate, I want to say thank you on behalf of all of Lions and our residents, and personally, just it's been such a privilege and pleasure working with you. And we're going to miss you, but excited for you too, that you're going to get time to spend with your grandkids and your kids and your cute dog, and maybe someday our dogs will get along. The dog bark. We do meetings and we try, but they just bark at each other. But really, I mean, Lions is better because of you, and we really appreciate it. And you know, when I was out there, it's the first time I've ever noticed your cool, like, wooden name plaque above your door. That's so cool. Well, we wish you well, and we're excited for Dolores to take over the reins. You've done a great job training her and getting her ready, and looking forward to Marissa as well, learning her role. So thank you for leaving us in good hands, and all the best. All right. With that, is there any summary of action items you want to run through?
I have, moving forward with the ordinance for the testing of the monitoring, facilities for the wastewater, student task force will be under boards and commissions on January 6th. And a report on the signage status for designated Stone Canyon Road. That's all I have for you.
Just work on the census campaign. Be proactive with the business outreach right now and moving forward. And we can follow up to see if the Boulder County Foundation is an option for additional funding toward the bridge. We can look into that.
The campaign for the bridge.
The campaign for the bridge.
And I would just ask you to go and make sure it's on the list. We'll go ahead and bring up Pay As You Throw on January 6th. I heard interest from several board members.
Where do you want it on there?
General business.
And that's all I have.
All right. With that, we'll ask for a motion to go into executive session. Sorry.
I move to go into executive session pursuant to CRS Section 246402-4B for the purpose of receiving legal advice from attorneys representing the town regarding the MOA with Lions Properties and the town's legal complaint against Lions Properties in Boulder County Court.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Call for the vote? Oh, aye. Yep. Sorry, habits. Okay.